This is a really exciting week. As some of you might be able to tell, can we pan down? Can we switch to camera B and see what we got going on here today? So today we're getting into a lot of soil exercises, experiments, really exciting stuff. So get ready for that. Don't tune out and go do something else. And everyone online, welcome. And if you can show yourself on camera, we would love that. If you can't, if you don't have a high signal, we totally understand. We're going to start with the meditation today. So today's meditation, let's close our eyes. In this meditation, what we want to do is take ourselves in our minds to what we find that we do tirelessly. So what you're going to be thinking about are things in life that others would deem work or hard work or frustrating work, or things that aren't necessarily easy for other people. These are things that either come really easy to you and you love doing them, but it's not just that you're talented at it. So come really easy to you doesn't mean that it gives you energy. So what we're really trying to hone in on is, what do we do that others would consider work that actually gives us energy, gives us a regenerative sense, meaning that when we're doing it, we could do it for hours, we could be working on it, and some people it's putting on a live event, some people it's having phone conversations, some people it's making things look beautiful on a web page. Whatever it is, those things you do tirelessly that actually excite you to do versus other things that are considered work for you. Just really think about that. We want to have this exercise so that you remember time and time again, I should probably be doing the things that are regenerative to me more often, because most likely I'm actually probably good at them and I'm actually probably giving a great service to the world when I'm doing those things. Then, the last part of this, for the time we have remaining, thinking about where and how that might connect to being an advocate or a support system or someone who's involved with this movement. So we're going to take another minute. All right. Let's open our eyes. Breathe in. All right. Let's high five someone next to us for being here, jumping in, doing the tough work. All right, let's get a couple shares. Anything that came to your mind that was, I want to have the people share who it was a surprise to them or something. They were like, I hadn't really thought of that. I thought it was just like, I like to do that, but yeah, no one pays me for it because I like it. So that's great. Anybody have any of those moments of things that they saw that maybe they should be doing more of the work around? Actions or, yeah.
In my previous...
Remember to speak up.
In my previous existence in this body, before I got really sick, I'm a midwife and for home birth. And a lot of people would think that would be a degenerative practice because we spend sometimes days at a time being awake, but it actually really filled me. And what was surprising was that I went back to that during this question because I didn't think that I could possibly go back to that, being in the state that I am now. And then when you said to bring it back together is when a woman's body is supported, she can do anything and give birth naturally with everything she has inside of her. And so how I see that correlating to the soil is that when the soil is supported, it can regenerate and heal itself, if we just give it the same. So the mother and the mother correlation really went home.
So what I heard you say was, in short, you were still midwifing, but just maybe in a different area now but helping recognize that something's available and viable with the support it needs.
Right.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love that. And it gives you energy.
Gives
That's
me a lot
the most
of
important
energy.
thing. Awesome.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a share that took them somewhere on this? No? We'll take it online. Oh, you got one more. Good.
Oh, well, I used to do wellness coaching, and I always felt so energized by it, and I was thinking, what is it about that I'm wanting to do with my information I'm getting here? And it's all about helping people see their first step that would allow them to feel like they are accomplishing something, but it wouldn't be so difficult that they would be overwhelmed. So everybody has a first step.
So that energizes you is giving someone access, the access point, no matter where they are, an easy access first step point.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. So today we have people online. I'm noticing the fans are on for circulation, so when that's happening, just make sure we're all speaking up here in class. One more person online. Did anything come to you? Living and doing regenerative things. All right. Great. I'm sure you had great things anyway.
What if we already know what we're good at? Like, the way you prompted it.
Huh?
You said what surprised you.
Yeah, I didn't want to, because then everyone would have gone. So the next thing is I want to remind everybody about, again, the uniqueness that they have. So this course is designed for you to be more empowered to reach audiences that you want to reach. Audiences that are regenerative for you to reach. Audiences that are, you're saying, hey, I want to feel more empowered around this group or talking about this subject matter to this person or that person. You can have a very general space of that, of like, I don't care who it is, I just want to be able to talk about this more. I just really want to emphasize that I've been shocked time and time again since we started doing this class at what's happening when people are feeling empowered to take this message with their own voice, not trying to do what Kiss the Ground is doing. So what I'm saying is, for your presentations and or your projects now, don't be held back by what I've said and what I've done. Truly, some of the most impressive presentations, Michelle can attest to this last class, and Don, we had some people coming with very fresh perspectives on this, and it was amazing for us. We're learning as well. So don't hinder your own desire to say a certain thing and project this a certain way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We really want you to own it because it makes everything, biodiversity wins, okay? That's what I'm saying. Next week. So next week we're doing 1 and 2 slide presentations. So that means you online, you're going to break off into groups and share them. And here in person, we're going to be doing really quick where you're coming up and presenting 1 or 2 slides of the existing slides. Your presentation at the end of class, you make up whatever you want, but this is stuff we've already covered. You're just getting up and practicing, making points, not memorized points, just internalized points about what's on the screen.
Is it everyone doing that?
Everyone is doing that. So if we have time, hopefully we can run through everyone. It's 1 to 2 minutes. It'll just be a quick popcorn exercise. Online people will be breaking apart. Your final presentations. So project ideas. We gave a new option. You don't have to do a presentation to officially graduate this course. So if you have a project, you write a project plan, or you already start your project during the course, and then we check on it with you throughout the next couple months. So anyone have ideas that might inspire others of projects who aren't doing presentations or are also doing a project? Anyone have anything that they're already thinking about?
We're working on turning our land into a regenerative. We're working on turning our land into a regenerative agricultural space, and so we have started the project and have brought in other people who have taken permaculture courses and are already practicing. And so we've taken on this big project so that we can bring access to people in the city to an open
Great.
space. So,
Awesome. So the rule with the projects is you do have to write up a project plan so that we can look at it and maybe give some feedback and help if we can, where we can. But that's part. If you're not doing a presentation, if you're doing a presentation, you can do a project and you don't have to tell us about it, and it's awesome. Yeah. But if you're not doing a presentation, that's how it goes. Anyone else have any? Yeah.
Well, my project is that thing I told you I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, you want to announce it? Go ahead.
I do. Can I stand
Yeah.
in front and feel really important? Okay. So I live locally. I live in Mar Vista, and there's a piece of land that's going to be turned ultimately into a community center. It has an old fire station on it, And they're trying to get this going. There's an event May 2nd, May 4th. And I thought maybe we could take a piece of the land, it might be the parkway, and try to use what we've learned in this class to regenerate it, but also maybe the more important thing is to have signage so that when people, it's on Centinela, if you know Centinela, just south of Palms. So it's very visible and people are like, oh, what's this? And we can teach what we're learning here, those little entry point things. And it would just be a team of people, any number of people. Ultimately maybe we can, once they start building the place, we could perhaps do the entire, convince them to do the entire landscaping, to build that in when they start building the whole building. I just want to say one more thing, that because I have a position where I have a blog that's with the community council, and I also have a booth, we could also take everything that we do and be blasting it to the public. So even people who don't even show up there. So there's, all
So
kinds.
you're going to make it accessible to anyone who wants to get involved, and also type it on Teachable so people, in case, because there are people in LA who aren't taking the
Right, and we can even
courses
just
in
have
person.
people doing graphics for us, so you don't even have to live in LA to do it, but
And the original Kiss the Ground Garden is also at a fire station. It's at 681 Venice Boulevard, so you can use that as like, oh, we want to do the same thing that they did in Venice.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Good
even if you
help.
want. So I listed, yeah.
I think Zach wants to go.
Yeah, Zach, go ahead.
Hey everyone. One of my ideas for a project is one of my insights that I've had is that farmers tend to, like most people, make decisions socially. And one of my ideas has been basically to start like a Patreon account to reach out to farmers who have a strong social media presence to see if, for like, say for instance, 5 years, if we could get a group of citizens to pay like $40 an acre for 50 acres for them to try out cover crops on their land.
Ooh.
And as a way of reaching out and trying to expose other farmers who may not be trying cover crops at all, including the social media entrepreneur farmers, to help broaden the exposure.
I got goosebumps, Zach.
That was incredible.
Sounds like a great one. I love it. I want to help. Go ahead, we have another one.
I'd like to raise my hand and first give a shout out to Zach, who has a great story to tell. Zach, this is Evie. And your story that you sent us the second round today was really great and inspiring. I want you to personally tell your personal story because it's powerful. And then just briefly share that my project idea is I'd like to sponsor a film festival locally and bring short films and longer films. So I've been looking into what's out there on films around regenerative agriculture.
Great. Awesome. These are great. All right, one more. If anyone has one, we'll do. These are because I'm so excited.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
Which is, I went to visit an owner. Actually, I know this lady who owns a health food store in Montreal, and we had a good talk a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about regeneration, getting good food. And she doesn't know where to get it, and she was complaining about not knowing which local farms or market gardens to go to get her produce. So I know a couple of market gardeners, and I was thinking of trying to start a co-op that would have its own brand, a regenerative brand, and it would be pretty local to the Montreal area, although I guess it could spread to other places. And it would just be a way of educating. The goal would be to educate people about the consumers in Montreal about regenerative agriculture, a way of getting a direct line to people as they go to health food stores.
I love that. And there's a great network in Montreal, Elliot. You're connected with a lot of the folks in Montreal already, yeah? Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. All great ideas. Let's just cheer for them. Yeah, awesome. So question, do we need to go over these test answers, or can everyone go over them themselves and remember which answers they got wrong? Because it could save some time if I don't have to read through all of this. Does everyone have it on Teachable?
Yeah.
We don't need to go over it?
No.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're going to do fast-paced sharing. So everyone in class is going to go, and then we're going to do 5 people online. This is going to be really quick, 30 seconds, maximum 45 to a minute if you have to. But we're just going to go around and pick any homework or inoculation material that you want. They're up on the screen if in case you're forgetting. And just say what it did to your brain, if something amazing, and remember you're presenting. So we're not going to come up to the front. We're just going to stand up and talk loudly. Ready? We're going to start with you, and then we're going to go like this. Snake our way through, okay? All right, so just stand up and then say one of the things you read and what it did for you.
So I'll just start with the first one because I thought that was a really cool visual. Basically, it was this test where you took like healthy soil and soil that didn't have any organic matter or aggregate matter or anything like that, and put it in these tubes of water, and you could easily see that like the healthy soil stayed intact because it allowed like filtration of water and it was porous, whereas the other one kind of turned into like this murky brown water.
Great. Awesome. Love it. Good job.
Hi everyone, I'm Shira. I think it was the Graham C one, the TED Talk about humus.
Yeah.
I really just liked how he opened with the etymology of humus, human, and humility, and how he talked about how humus and human and humility all come from the words or the meaning of and for the earth, and how our lack of humility as humans has probably disconnected us from the earth. So I thought that really stood out, and I just thought I liked how his talk was solution based and gave us, I think, around like 10 different ways in which we could advocate for building humus and advocate for the soil.
Great. So remember, as we're doing this, perfect, but you're not talking to a crowd who knows it. You're saying, like, I just watched this thing. I just want to share with you. Remember? So that tactic.
We're talking to people who don't know it?
Yeah, you're just sharing people about this thing you read or watched or whatever.
Got it. I'm going to pick, my name's Meadow. I'm going to pick Greg Judy. What I actually really enjoyed about watching, well, he wasn't really on the video much, but hearing him speak in the slides that he put up, it really showed like how regenerative.
So this farmer Greg Judy.
Yeah, this farmer Greg Judy takes you through the whole like regenerative ranching process of raising cattle and having grazable grasslands and how to like move them from paddock and from space to space, and how it actually regenerates the land and how it can regenerate the water sources and how it can regenerate all the plant and diversity of the plant life there, and talked about how to, like, the importance of tall grasses and how they can go even further deeper into the ground, sequestering more carbon deeper in. And what I found very fascinating about what he was talking about was actually the dung beetle and how the dung, it was really awesome. He talked about the dung beetle, how just the whole process of like how it goes down into the soil, and that actually brings like when it rains, it's actually a place for the water to like go further into, and then that's creating more fertilization from the actual dung itself, and how it's like how literally the entire process of what he shows that it's a completely 100% regenerative process. And the solar power, he talked about cows being solar powered by like walking themselves on their own pastures down the highway, and like showed how it's really possible not to use fossil fuels, and like how we can actually really do this in a regenerative, and once it becomes regenerative, sustainable way.
Awesome. Really great. I love that video too, so there's so much to elaborate on. But if we can just do one thing, like one thing that really captured me was
the dung beetle.
Yeah, so great, awesome. Perfect.
I watched this video by Race Lake Test, and what I really enjoyed about this video was really seeing how when you put soil inside of water, one that has been properly cared for regeneratively and one that has been depleted and has maybe been tilted and has not had any crop rotation or cover crop, that it actually pretty much turns into nothing and can absorb nothing and just dilutes into water, versus something that has been properly cared for just naturally stays together. And so I really enjoyed seeing that, especially because I work in the garden and I could see how when water doesn't penetrate or how things don't work, it just gave it hands-on to what I've been visually working with.
Great.
know, like my head completely disappeared, but I can do this, right? I don't know that I was excited about everything that I read. What I'm most excited about was, I can't remember what the regenerative rancher, or is that something?
Greg
that-
Judy?
Was that he? Okay,
Yeah.
so.
Oh, there was
Yeah, I think
there
was
were
the-
two.
I
There were
think it was
two.
the optional.
A regenerative secret, is that one?
Yeah.
Oh, Alan Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So although I'm vegan, and part of this class, I was really excited to see a process where our manufactured animals can actually be utilized in green pastures, and then the fact that really, I'm getting nervous.
It's okay, you're doing
It's
great.
okay, I'm gonna practice. That my idea for joining this class was the world, but then when I found that animals were going to be used as part of it, I got a little crunch. But watching the fact that they can be utilized in green pastures, and at the end of it all, they're fat and they're happy, and the idea really is that if we do this, we can actually eat meat to at the massive proportions that we are eating it, and then animals won't be slaughtered in such an inhumane way.
Wow,
That's awesome.
powerful. Goosebumps. You just wanted to say, when sometimes when you're feeling nervous but you feel it, it comes across no matter what. So I felt your moment. I felt that this has been difficult for you.
Okay.
So that came across, and that's good. That
Okay.
gives us emotion. That's fine. People need that
It's
in their life.
genuine.
It's genuine.
Yeah, Jerry.
Yeah.
Do a power pose.
Awesome.
I'm also kind of nervous. My heart's like beating quick. So for me, I've always really been able to comprehend like how regenerative agriculture is better for the environment, it's better for the air, it's better for people. But through I think Greg Judy, and then also in A Regenerative Secret and some of the readings last week, it was really nailed home that it's more economical as well. So being able to put all those pieces together, because on a land where you have grasses that are growing 3, 4, 5 times what are on normal ranches, that means more carbon, more fuel for your animals, and healthier animals, but at the same time, it's better for the farmers because they can have more animals on a smaller piece of land.
Yeah, that was great. That was great.
I read one of the optional ones, the Mother Jones, How Commodity Farming is Tough. And so we see this consolidation all across the food system of big companies becoming more and more involved in more aspects. So like corn purchases are 87% are run by 5 companies. Global corn purchases, that is nuts. And in the article it talked about how corn is a commodity now, which means it's indistinguishable from one farmer to the other, and that's what makes it easy to trade for these big companies. They have the power over who they buy and what they buy and how much they want to pay for it.
The Walmart of farm, yeah.
Yeah. So it became like not only is the corn a commodity, but also the farmers are a commodity. Glencore, ConAg, Monsanto don't care about the farmers or their livelihood. And it talked about in the article how it's expected that farmers will make a zero profit because it's a quote competitive industry. And we have to think about who's it competitive for. Competitive for the large, multinational, huge corporations, but not for the farmers because they're being treated as almost the big companies in this situation versus the big companies are being treated as the consumers. It's competitive for them, but not the other way around. And that's a great place where I think we can shift how corn is sold.
Wow. I forgot about that article. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's,
Oh, Mother Jones has a ton of great stuff.
They do.
Yeah.
I fell into like a rabbit hole of sustainable
was that one in
This
this?
is the optional.
Oh,
one.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
optional, and you
That's right,
click
those
on all the
optional
links
ones. Yeah.
afterwards, and it takes you all
This
the whole
author,
path.
Tom Philpott,
All right.
he's out there doing it.
So hi everyone, my name is Arohi. So I work for an environmental nonprofit, and I'm very integrated in the politics and policy space, advocating for healthy soil legislation, for reductions in barriers to make regenerative farming and regenerative agriculture more accessible across the nation. And one thing that we come across a problem that we come across in this advocacy space, in this politics space, is often what narratives we use to persuade people that there is a problem and that there are a suite of solutions to help remedy that problem. So I watched Ray Archuleta's video. He is a pioneer of regenerative agriculture, and as he was walking through the different tests that determine the health of a soil, at the very end of the video, he said something that was really provocative to me. He said that we don't have let me pull it. We have an infiltration problem, not a runoff problem. And that nutrient runoff problem is often the narrative that disassociates us, that removes our ability to have conversations with farmers and with policymakers. So I liked, my takeaway from this video was that there's this new narrative that we can use, right? It's an infiltration problem. It's, to your point, an economic cost problem, that the lack of ability for water to infiltrate, for nutrients to infiltrate, for sunlight to infiltrate, for carbon to infiltrate, those are all economic costs.
Word. I got goosebumps again. Good.
Is it okay if I just stay here?
Yeah, you're in a very awkward spot to stand. I can see that.
Okay. Is it okay if I talk? I really got into the Kiss the Ground book over the weekend.
Sure, go for it.
Just because I feel like my audience is a little bit disconnected to nature, and I've been there before. And I think little by little, my life has kind of pointed me in this direction. I come from like maybe a colder industry where people are after profits, and I'm explaining to people that I've discovered this nonprofit organization called Kiss the Ground, and that it's a movement here, and they have this really cool book, and it's actually more political than you think, and you just read like the first chapter, and how the U.S. has to work with this brilliant guy in France that was talking about this 4 to 1,000, and so anyway, I feel like that's what these are the conversations that I've been having lately, just about bringing awareness to this organization, and that people, me included, can be very disconnected from where our food comes from, and even in the book, just pricing, commodities pricing, and how it's affecting farmers, and it didn't happen yesterday. It's been a history, and that we're just kind of products of the industrialization, the degenerative agricultural system. So how it's how can we connect a little bit more to the circle? Like, that's why I was feeling very overwhelmed, and I'm very grateful for all the homework and all the assignments, but I feel like I was like, wow, I think this might be a little bit more than I thought I could do. And so I just started with the book, and it's been a very good general guide to me, and I speak to a lot of influential people and mentors, and none of them have ever heard of this, and just kind of starting there.
Great. Awesome. That's perfect. Thank you. You want to go?
Yeah. When I was watching the SLAC test video, that inspired me to actually take soil from the backyard that me and my brother have been working on over the past few years, because we've both been farming like various places and coming home for like a little bit of time, and to actually see the development within like the soil. Right. And I was a bit nervous about reading sometimes, like I don't know how well I've been treating things, and so it was very inspirational to like see it performing decently. It didn't. Within 4 hours it was falling apart. So
That's okay.
It wasn't like the 40-year like no-till soil, but it felt good that it didn't just dissolve right away. Because that's what
your fear was.
My gut was like, oh god.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. A personal story like that goes light years for people to know that you did something, you did it, and like this happened. Yeah.
Plus, 2 friends came over and I like showed them the test because I was just really excited about it. So, look at this soil on a Pyrex card.
Awesome. And we're going to talk about today how you can show bad soil pretty simply and scrape it all together. Awesome.
So I really like when I watched Susan Simard's thing. It just reminded me a lot of your story about the trees. And then how certain trees are in the same network, but not other trees. And then I thought it was really cool with like mother trees giving like older generation giving to the younger generation. That's something we don't think about. And like you need to let them live longer so you can like pass on. That's just kind of that kind of blew my mind.
It's so tickling for me. Like it tickles my soul. It makes me like happy and sad at the same time.
Say one thing?
One more thing. Wait, yeah.
Oh, we have one more person.
If
I
you-
just wanted to say to the guy who talked about for the farmers and the incentives, I just want to volunteer some of my time. If you need to, I want to help support that project.
Great, Zach, you got a volunteer here. Awesome. And, let's get a couple in. Let's get a couple online. Oh, sorry, you
That's
got
okay. I
jumped up.
talked a lot, but it's brief. Well, I like the, I saw this really cool experiment where a guy took soil, one was regeneratively, the regenerative model, and the other was what we usually think of as soil. And I'm always hearing about how the compacted soil, it runs off, and I watch it when it rains, but I've never actually seen it when it goes in, and that was what was really cool. They had these two tubes, as you know, and to sit there and watch it was like, oh, now I have like a mental model of what I'm shooting for, and I immediately went from there to one of the people who works with me at an edible school garden, telling her, we're going to do this experiment with the kids, and
That's a great experiment.
Great. Awesome. Online. Let's get a few online. Yes, we're good. Just go ahead. Whoever speaks first, then we'll have 3 or 4 of you go.
Stephen here. Hello.
Yeah, we hear you.
That's great to hear. Sorry you can't see me, guys. I'll try and get onto a new computer next week so you can see me. Had a great conversation with people over the Easter holidays just this weekend, and got into a bit of a good conversation, and the conversation came up with, we got 10 billion to 11 billion people coming on the earth. How the hell are we going to feed them? And my neck just pricked up and said, well, that's fake news, unfortunately for you. And it's a conversation that goes down a rabbit hole where people really, really feel disempowered by the fact that they're not going to be able to feed themselves or being an individual. And I turned the conversation around by saying, well, there is enough knowledge out there if you choose, and it starts with GOOGLE, and from that position you would be able to find that we do have a lot of food. It's unfortunate that the distribution of the food at present and the wastage of food at the present is what causes us huge issues. Eventually the conversation calmed down, and I did get the point of view to try and explain how a tree grows with air. And I have to admit, I've got a little bit further to go on that one, but I got But anyway, that's I'd just like to say what I do find in this space is a lot of people go down rabbit holes with one singular thing as a human being that they get scared of. And that's one of the things that I find interesting.
I love it. Thanks for sharing, Stephen. That's awesome. Next, who wants to go?
I can go.
Go ahead, share.
Hi. Okay. So many thoughts since I've started this, and I've been reading about everything. One of the main ones is that I really, really want to be a farmer now. So I think what I saw this past week that was the most visual representation in my mind was from The Regenerative Secret. And just the contrast between seeing the cows, frolicking through the tall grass in the holistic grazing model, and then contrasting that with the CAFO model, or CAFO model, with the cows just in this barren land eating, who knows what, the soy products from degenerative grounds. It was just so sad just to see that, but then to see the happy cows, that was just incredible. And then just listening to the farmer, just the love that he has for the land and for his animals. It's just, if every farmer could feel that and be part of that, right? It just really makes you want to just tell everybody.
That's really great. Thanks for sharing that. as you dive into this more, and all of you will probably be addicted to this idea for the rest of your lives, so you'll probably come across it a lot. But one thing, probably one of the most rewarding experiences of knowing we're on the right path is hearing the stories from farmers of their transition of what was a fight and what was hard and irritating and debilitating to them to something that was giving them life and getting them excited to get up in the morning. That was regenerative to them. Like, to hear those stories, I always get emotional when I talk about it, but they're awesome. I'm going to stop there. Let's have one more online, and then we got to move on. Crank ahead. Who's got it?
Hi, I'm Glenn. Oh.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Okay. I didn't know it was on. All right. Yeah, I was. It sort of follows up with what Stefan was saying about how are we going to eat and stuff. But I really liked Stuart McMillan's cartoon about the thin air, and it's you put a lot more into it than just talking about the how generation works, and the and he did gets into the it's amazing to think about what happens and putting all this kiss the ground stuff we're learning into this, such as the stomata, the photosynthesis, the soils, and how all that comes together, and seeing that slice of it there. But he goes farther, and I look at the buildings he talks about and how they're constructed and how what we have to go through to build those and how much energy it takes. And I live in an industrial area, nearby, and you look at all the old factories, they are not regenerating. They're sitting there and rusting, falling apart, getting burned, getting, just being, nothing is happening with those. There's no, it's all human generation. It's taking a lot of energy, a lot of resources, and then there is no regeneration whatsoever. There's just empty shells that are just sitting there and not doing what nature does at all.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else dying to share online? Just absolutely got to get it out?
I'd like to share.
Go, Alexis.
Alexis.
Sorry,
Hi, my name's Alexis, and I live in Missoula, Montana. And my side job, my day job is building websites and search engine optimization. And I went to a burger place that recently opened up in town, and they pride themselves in organically grown meat or raised meat, beef. And so I was sitting there at the counter, the bar, and eating my burger, which was really good. And this gentleman walks up and sits down next to me, and he's wearing a cowboy hat and some boots, and we get to talking, and it turns out that he's the guy that supplies the beef for this restaurant. And the conversation continues, and he drops regenerative agriculture, and then I'm like, oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. You and I, what do you know about Gabe Brown, for example? And he's like, wow, I actually went and hung out on Gabe Brown's ranch or on his farmland and did some work with him. And I guess what I'm getting at here is the 18% that we need, the tipping point, is, I think, a little bit closer than maybe we feel sometimes. So.
What a story! What a story! That's the A+ of today. That was good. I got goosebumps. I almost cried. I love it. That's a story right there. That's your opening of your talk. Great job, brother. Thanks for making sure you talk too. That's always good. If you have something important to say, make sure you say it. Okay, that's the lesson from today. All right, public speaking techniques. Let's stand up, take a quick shake off. Everyone online, stand up, take a quick shake off. Woo! That was fun. Sometimes I wish our class was 3 hours so we could do everything.
Every day of the week.
Yeah. We might be a little extra time today because there's exercise at the end we have to do, and we missed exercise last week. All right.
I think we should just expand it to 24/7, Finn.
Just be like, what are you doing? I'm sleeping right now. I have a question though about soil aggregates. So let's look at camera B for a second. So I think today we'll start, since everyone did watch the Slake test, we're going to start with the Slake test, and I think we should get a volunteer, and I'll just jump in, and Don will jump in when we feel like things are missing from your explanation. But I want first, as we're going around, take a sample, hold it. This is our tilled soil. And you can just touch these because they're not as hard as rocks. But just, you don't have to take it with you. Just feel it for a second and then pass it on. But this is pretty hard. They're both pretty hard. They've been dried out a bit. So just look at the difference. Feel the difference of the texture of these different pieces here. Everyone online, we have tilled soil in clumps and then non-tilled soil, aggregated soil in clumps. And people are kind of seeing the difference.
And I would just add, if you ever get a chance to look at your soil aggregates, or what we might call dirt clods, please don't call them that. You might want to use a 30 times loop or a jeweler's loop and really look at the actual formation of those structures. It's pretty phenomenal when you look at the tilled versus the untilled.
So what Don's saying is you'll be able to see the texture, and when we talk about plating and we talk about texture and formation of the aggregates, you can get the ice. We just unplugged something.
Oh, I hit it on accident. I didn't mean to.
Oh, okay.
My bad.
We need to turn this TV back on. 1 sec.
We got it.
Oh, you got it. Okay, great. So what we're talking about is surface area. Is everyone hearing this? Surface area is massively important because surface area means more airspace, more water space, more space for life to live. Okay? When we have more surface area, just means more room. So you have more surface area. If you zoomed in on this, you would see surface area, and the other one you would see plating, and where it's basically compacted to a certain degree. All right, cool. All right, do we have the other plate? Where's the other plate? Oh, there it is. All right, so this is not, when you're doing this presentation, you can just make sure people don't think you're doing a magic trick, like trying to pull one over on them. This is from a farm, Pomona College. Just someone from our team just drove by and we're like, oh, we're always looking for tilled soil, and we live in LA, so there's not tons of it in LA. So she just grabbed some for us. So this is just regular old farm land at a university even, and it's just tilled soil. This is from my backyard. So that is not great, deep root, awesome aggregates. These are just regular old backyard aggregates. But as you see, they're stuck together. Okay, so we're just gonna take a piece here. Oh, look at those little beautiful aggregates. That's pretty great. And we're gonna take a piece here. And you can do this at home. So 2 jars. Today I just went outside and broke off my, under our houses we have these things for access, whatever. And now I'm gonna have raccoons because I just ripped off the fence to get some screens, so you can do it anywhere. The point is, these are 2 vases. Kiss the Ground broke our original ones, so these are just vases from my house. Vases, whatever. All right, so who's going to be my explainer? Who wants to volunteer for explaining what's happening? Nobody? Michelle is Instagram living?
I'll volunteer.
Yeah, all right, cool. All right, come on up. So you're just going to tell your audience what you got here. You can look. So can you see both of these like this? There we go. So just make sure once you place it, to talk to everyone and then tell them what you got going on.
You're going to have to tilt the camera down just slightly.
Okay. And explain it. Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So in case you can't see what's going on in my hands, I have 2 different soil samples. The one here in my right, your left, is a sample pulled from a farm close to Pomona, California. It is representative of a heavily tilled farm / agricultural land. You can't feel this, but I'm going to transmit my sensitivity through the camera and say that it is very hard, very crusty, kind of chalky, very dusty. And I assume if I...
Well, they might have felt it. You might have passed that around earlier. They might have felt it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, if I crushed it, I'm pretty sure it would turn into dirt or sand or dust. On my left, to your right, I have another example of soil picked up from my dearest friend, Finian's backyard. I'm going to hold it up so you can see what's going on here. Can you see how there's some clumps kind of holding on to the larger clump?
Yes.
What you may not be able to see on the camera are strands, roots that are holding some of the soil together, as opposed to this, where there are absolutely no roots, no jingly little ornaments hanging off from the soil. And what we're about to demonstrate is visually, how can you assess the health of a soil? How can you determine whether or not your soil is actually capable of retaining water, of promoting life in the soil, of retaining moisture and nutrients? And we're going to do that through this slake test, which there are 2 vases here with some fencing removed from underneath my dear friend Finian's house, which we'll go into later. Talk about that
explanation. Okay.
All right, so now I'm just gonna
lightly. Don't drop them.
lightly lay them down and watch what happens.
Wow.
There we go, folks.
Wow. Ooh.
Oh. And so here.
That's incredible.
Can you explain what's happening?
Yeah, so let me move off so you can see what's happening. This sample right here is the one that was pulled from the college, from the university. Again, highly tilled, not taken care of, probably ignored for however long. And that dirt, it's not soil, it's dirt at this point, is just filtering through, losing all of its shape and form. All of that is being lost into the bottom of this vase. To erosion, yes, absolutely. Now, nature didn't invent muddy streams, right? Like, this is why we have runoff into freshwater ecosystems, into lakes, rivers, streams, ponds, because this is what a majority of conventional soil looks like. It has no structure, it dissolves immediately into our waterways. Now look at this beauty, this lovely beauty holding together so well. Barely any of that soil, and this is soil, it's not dirt. This is soil, nothing on the bottom. You can see that it's holding on to its structure underneath all of this pressure. It's a sign that Finian's doing something right.
Great. So it's just grass. So then you can reference, for example. So remember we talked about the carbon being pumped in and shared with the organisms that are making the glues. Remember I talked about those carbon-based glues? That's the difference. So the glues, the natural glue structures, have aggregated this piece together. So even in conditions where there's water all around it, it's not busting apart. The glues have been dispersed and disbanded here. So even when this clumps together, it's a facade of an aggregate. It's not real. It's a clud, or whatever you want to call it.
When did you pick that sample from your backyard?
This morning.
This morning? I don't know if you just saw, but there was a bubble that came up from that sample, which to me is a sign of life.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't it also based on, like, there's air pockets in there, so the water's filtering through it instead of just eroding it. So
Exactly.
it can infiltrate through it as if it was planted in the ground.
It can infiltrate through, and we talked about the sponge, right?
Yeah.
These, probably not this one, but a healthy soil is holding 20 times its weight in water. So it's being absorbed. It's not just protecting itself. It's being absorbed in there. All that space is actually able to expand because it's like a mini sponge that nature invented over 500 million years. So this sponge has been broken up. There is no glue holding it together. And that's the miracle we have of, like, why our streams are muddy. And we give these a little shake even, right? That's all this comes out. Give it a little shake.
Wow.
Finn's still doing pretty good with his backyard. Now, I don't cut my grass very short. My grass is always this tall, so it could be part of the reason. Cool. Anything else people are noticing? Anything anyone wants to say? Don, did we miss anything?
I would just say when you talk about the silt and
Great
sand,
job, by the way.
say the silt and sand eroding into the lakes and rivers, you would also say the poisons and pesticides, add
Right.
that to it.
So anything, yes, exactly. Anything that was on this soil is now being eroded. And we're getting a little, oh, these little pads are falling off. But I'm jiggling this, and this is almost all completely. So we're going to leave those now. We're going to move to another test, okay? So now we're going to use my daughter's little bathroom toy. Actually, we're going to use that in a little bit. But right now we're going to do another test, which is, so just thinking about this. Think about when you're out there and you're talking to policy members. Imagine if you had this and you said, hey, I'm going to come in and do some demonstrations. Imagine the minds that you could change if you were to do these things at a policy meeting versus just get up and talk for a minute. So this one I've actually done downtown Los Angeles at City Hall. So this is a really simple test. You can literally just go get a shovel full of healthy soil, put it in a cup, find some depleted soil, mostly places where you have bare ground. Don't dig down, because a lot of times there is healthy soil underneath, and the plated stuff is really what we're trying to demonstrate. So scrape off the top of that. That'll be more reminiscent of your actual dispersed state, because there will be remaining, in most cases, there'll be remaining PEDs of real healthy, sort of healthy soil. So, all right, here's what we're showing here is infiltrate. I think I have too much water in these. Infiltration rates and what happens. Equal amount. Okay.
Cheers.
These are nice glasses, yeah. So here we go. Ready? One. Let's get a timer on this. Anyone want to pick up a timer?
I can do it.
You got a timer ready?
Yeah. Okay, tell me.
Ready? And you're gonna watch right at the angle, and as soon as this one is infiltrated, tell her to stop. Cool.
Yeah, got it.
No, I got it. I was trying to have it so she can see that.
Yeah, and make sure it's in the camera view. You got it.
You can see? Okay. Move a little further
14
here.
different camera views.
Here we go. On your mark, get set, go.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Done.
Yeah.
All right. How much time was that?
It was 13 seconds, 13.37.
13. So this is from my backyard. I don't have a great yard because I don't have very deep roots. This is just my backyard. Okay, and this is my neighbor's yard where they don't have any grass growing. I just scraped it off the top.
How long
Look
have
at
you
there's still
had
a dry
grass
shell.
planted in your yard?
I don't know. It's not really my house.
Got it.
But you just let the grass grow really tall rather than
Not,
cutting it short.
I just make sure it never gets. So I cut my grass with a weed whacker instead of a lawnmower because none of them are long enough.
Is
None of them.
it this grass?
Yeah, that's from actually. Yeah, that's one of my grasses.
Well, there's an abandoned house next to me. I'm gonna start testing their soil.
So look, how long? Oh, we didn't. Oh, you didn't keep it going. Sorry, you stopped it, right?
Yeah, it was 13.
Shoot, I was supposed to just.
Don't
tell
worry,
you the
it's
number.
on the tape.
Oh, it's on tape. The point is, we get it. It's still happening. So when we have a rain, when you have a significant rain, that was an inch of water at least, inch and a half. That's a major rainstorm. We have almost full infiltration on a heavy rainstorm. When we have depleted, degraded soil with none of the glues holding it together, why does flooding occur? Were you the one who talked about the quote? We have an infiltration problem.
Right.
So let's say that. We have an infiltration problem.
Infiltration problem.
So this is where we're talking about something different dramatically happening. We have farms all over the US. We're doing 100% infiltration, 0 runoff. 100% infiltration, 0 runoff. You can just demonstrate to people how much runoff we have happening. Yeah.
There's also something to be said about recharging groundwater aquifers with healthy soil, right? Because it's not running off, and that fast infiltration means that you can access and regenerate depleted aquifers.
Yeah.
Yep.
We filter on the way down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Replenish.
Regenerate.
Yeah, regenerate's great. I love it. Okay, next one. All right, so all of you are going to do this at home. You can try this as well. This is the Dee Frischhaus bread and flour test. Look, it's still hanging out on the top, y'all.
Yes, there's dry chunks at the bottom.
Dry chunks at the bottom. Okay. Now we're going to move these a little bit over, sorry, for you here. Bread and flour test, okay? So what this is representing, and who can tell me why the bread, I'm going to flip this over because the top got stale, which is a great indicator. By the way, if you get stale bread and leave it outside, it indicates what happens to even healthy soil when it's left out. It gets hydrophobic. Okay, so you can flip it back over if that happens when you're demonstrating, okay? Because we want to show healthy soil that has recently been, taken the plants out of it. You don't want to show capped soil. Okay, so what we're showing here is dispersed state. So the flour is representing when we are taking the glue out. We're basically having soil stripped of its carbon, and it's put into a dispersed state. So what is the dispersed state we talked about? Remember Don talked about sand, silt, and clay. Which is the smallest particle? Clay. And clay comes to the surface because it's the smallest particle, which then will tend to make it so there's compaction and capping off that happens, okay? So this is our bread, is representing our healthy soil. Now what makes bread bread, this magical thing? Yeast. What is yeast?
Fungi.
Fungi. So when we talk about this, we're saying this bread that was once this has become this aggregated state. So think, if we zoomed in on a microscope with this, we would see this aggregated state with what? A lot of surface area and a lot of places for air and water and an absorptive capacity. So bread really represents the soil well. You can go into your kitchen and say, hey everybody, want to know why I'm geeking out about healthy soil? Here's why, okay? So then you're basically trying to, you can, at your tables, you just have a cup with holes poked in the bottom of it, which is totally a sprinkler. So we're going to start with our flour. And today, we're going to do something fun where we're going to just put it at a slight angle so we can watch how much faster we get runoff, okay? Good camera angle here. So check it out. What does this look like? California's hillsides?
Yeah.
California's farms?
Right.
Look at all that pollution. My goodness. Seriously, that is exactly what is happening when it rains on our land. You get, look, a teeny bit of infiltration happening at the top. But mostly, what is this? As we just talked about, that's the runoff. So that's all of our pollution. That's the sand, the silting of all of our waterways, okay? And you see the slight angle that happened, it just ran off instantaneously. We're going to fill this back up.
It's the cutest water can I've ever seen.
All right, so here we go. Now it's the same amount of water. Happy times. Even at an angle, water's just being absorbed. Oh look, water's starting to come out the bottom. What color is it?
Clear.
Clear. What is this representative of? We're going to learn it in week 6, don't worry if you don't remember. But what happens when, what is this? What does this represent? Where does clean water come? Groundwater, like a spring, right? So springs happen because water infiltrates down, hits a surface like heavy clay or rock, and then it runs off down the mountain slope. It runs off where it can, right? So that's where we get clean water from. The only thing that's not clean here is just a few particles from our bread like sesame seeds, okay? Still going. So what's really cool here, now if we compare these together, when we do something like this, watch. So we have this here, take your finger and you're going to scrape off your layer of your wetness. What do we have here?
Dry.
What are we saying to all those almond growers who are on drip irrigation and waiting for rains? You didn't actually, your trees, the only thing they're getting is deep groundwater. You're not actually feeding them barely anything with those drips and everything. So this is what we're talking about. Dry soil, just a small layer down. Comparatively, dig your hand in there, put your finger in there, rip it open. What do we got here? Oh my gosh, it's wet all the way down. So, right, if we stick a plant in it, okay, this plant, root system, what's it going to be to compensate? We're going to have a what? A very shallow root system.
It barely holds the plant.
This one's going to be like chilling. So now if we have plants covering this, doing photosynthesis, meaning they're endothermic, absorbing heat energy and making mini air conditioners, they're protecting this, they're shading this. So this sponge, soil sponge, is now retaining water, meaning that this green plant can stay green and photosynthesize for long periods of time. How long can this one photosynthesize for? As long as there's water. Now there's no more water, so it's going to turn brown and be what? Ready to get burned by fire. Okay? This one, not so much. Okay, so now at your tables, you all are going to break apart online, and you're going to do your best to pretend, or if you run into your kitchen really quick, which you're probably not going to do, but just take people through. So we have flour here and we have bread here. We're pouring the water on. You're going to break apart. You're going to describe that to people. And you all here are going to do the same and just kind of rotate at your tables. Michelle, where did Michelle go? Oh, there you go. Sorry. Can you break people apart? I'll hold your camera for you. Sorry, everybody. You got people online.
Can I double check something I thought you said?
Yeah.
Which I've never heard anybody address. It's about the drip systems.
Yeah, go ahead.
They don't really work.
Well, they work, but it's just how hard are humans having to work when we leave a soil in that condition?
But it sounds like you're saying that they're not watering near the top, which is what they need to be doing as well.
Well, they're watering near the top, but what we're saying is that the tendency for degraded soil is that your evaporation rate is super high. So this little wetness that we showed here, that's going to evaporate within the day in California. Within a sunny day, it's going to all be gone, and then you're going to rely heavily on, we got to drip irrigate again. So when we talk about a big rain happening, if we're able to absorb, and then, as we mentioned, restore our underground water, have streams running out. Because if we pick this up, imagine this, guys, everyone. If we pick this up, watch this. You see how it's water dripping out of my fingers here? So that's our constant stream throughout the year. Because it's slowly gravity still works, it's still dripping down. All right, cool, we're ready to break off. So y'all are gonna share with each other, do this test here. Just two. Just talk about it. We're gonna go for four minutes, okay?
Can I ask you a quick question?
That was really great. I heard some really awesome things. Okay? So, most of you weren't here last class, meaning the January course. I think we have some retakers, but mostly people weren't. We went on an amazing field trip, and we'll actually post the field trip for next week just so people can see. Oh, by the way, Michelle, when's our field trip?
Next Saturday at 10:30 a.m.
Next Saturday, 10:30 a.m. is our field trip, and it's an hour away from Los Angeles here.
May 4th. Nice. May 4th at 10:30 a.m.
And Michelle will send out the address.
Yeah.
And when do we get back?
We'll be done by 12, and then it's an hour back, so we'll be back by 1, probably 1:15. 1:15.
Ben, where are you headed?
We're going to Molly Englehart's farm. She just started.
What city?
It's just north of LA, about an hour. I just wanted to share one more thing. So we were out with Roger Savory after and during a rainstorm. Roger Savory's Alan Savory's son. He unfortunately moved up north 3 hours, so we can't go visit him for this one. But he said something that was really amazing that kind of just stuck in all of our heads. He was saying, while it's raining, would you want to have your cows up on a hillside while it's raining? What do you think he said? No, right? Makes total sense. He said yes. And you think cows on a hillside in the rain, wouldn't that be all muddy and erosion and everything like that? But what he talked to us about is, what does evolution do? Everything in life is regenerative, right? So cows' hooves are, this isn't going to work. So during the rain, right, it's raining here. I'm just going to make this a little bit wet. The cow hoof is shaped so it makes a teeny little dam area, and it goes in, and you watch this, and we're making a video about California's droughts right now, and we have them on camera during a heavy rainstorm, showing that these little hoof prints fill in as many pools, allowing for infiltration that on this dry land would not have allowed to happen. It is just unbelievable to just think how awesome it is that our animals are designed. You look at these hoof prints and they're perfect little swimming pools for when there's over rain. Awesome. Anyway, I just want to share that. So, during the rainstorms, put your cows on the hillside. They'll make the next time it rains amazing. And
just don't drive on steep clay slopes after a rainstorm.
All right, that's the fiasco that happened at the end of our last road trip. It was crazy. All right, so we're going to jump into presentation mode. Today we're starting with a few slides. So, starting off today, this quote. Let's read it together. Ready? Is the condition we call drought something other than the absence of rain?
Yes.
Do we all get that at a different level now? Yes. What happens if there's a drought here and this is shaded? Not so bad, right? What happens when there's a drought here after heavy rain, everything ran off? Well, now with our cow prints, we're good. Check out how good we are with our cow prints. Like, seriously.
Yeah, we're just good.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is, the cow prints help. So this is really profound. Now that you're in this class, it's not so profound. But for most people you tell this to, this is earth-shattering for how we're thinking about our conditions. And both of you brought up today of like switching the mindset for how people are thinking. 26 major civilizations have failed due to the collapse of agriculture. How arrogant would we be to presume that the root cause of our collapse won't be the exact same thing? Roger Savory. We are on slide 92, I believe, or 3. Yeah, we're just going through the quotes here. It's not the quantity of rain that falls, but rather how usable or effective that rainfall is. How many trillions of gallons of water will have been lost? This is in her book. A full inch came down in a short time, leading to localized flooding. What did we see? Localized flooding, right? The next day, the land was bone dry. All that rain did nothing to nourish the land, thirsty as it might have been. The more life in the soil, the more fertile it is. The less life in the soil, the less fertile it is. The only way to get energy to feed that life is through photosynthesis. We have to make every decision possible to have plants continue to grow and photosynthesize year-round. The expansion of the English Empire caused so many issues, but one that often gets overlooked is the use of their agricultural system. The problem was there wasn't an understanding that England has a very unique wet climate that allows the land to regenerate extremely fast, so as to withstand years of prolonged degenerative practices without significant degeneration occurring. Assuming their agriculture to be advanced, they arrogantly stamped this system of agriculture on brittle environments, causing massive desertification around the globe. It's not the cow, it's the how. It's not the tracta, it's the till facta. I made that one up. Someone else made the cow one up, but I had to go with it. So, this is just some news. Everyone heard about the flooding that's happening right now? Look at the map.
Oh, God. Oh, wow.
So, this is just our dead zone now, but glyphosate is being, more and more news is coming out about glyphosate being wreaking havoc on all life systems, aquatic and non-aquatic. All right, so today's talk. Most farming destroys the soil building system. So in your talk, when you're out there presenting, we're saying, look, we're teaching folks how soil is built. Kind of the epiphany that, like we said, we didn't know how the soil worked, or Ray says we didn't know how the soil worked. We share with people the majority of healthy soil. And look, folks, this is a weed. Check it out. Weeds are only called weeds if they're not doing exactly what you want. This one happens to be aggregating soil. Look at all those little aggregates. Look at that, right? So we call them forbs when they're not in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because grass is a weed when it's in the wrong place at the wrong time. So just call them forbs. It's much Forbes, F-O-R-B-E-S, I believe. I don't know, like the magazine? I don't know. No?
No, it's just F-O-R-B-S.
Great, thanks.
And it's not B-S.
Yeah. So we're saying that most farming destroys the soil building system. So that technology that we've been talking about, most farming is destroying it, making it not work. And you can make this statement too. Most farming is degenerative, meaning over time it's losing its capacity to function at its highest state. Yes?
Yes.
Here's a statistic. The US loses 1.7 billion tons of topsoil annually. For those online who always ask the question, it is from the USDA as well. This is another one you can talk about. You can go down this, however, we had people last class going down this rabbit hole. Soil loss is not new. Okay, where's this picture? Somewhere in the Middle East today. I believe this is Jordan or somewhere like that. It is Jordan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So remembering when we talk about that region of the world, the Fertile Crescent, when we remind people, we've talked about this before, but it's a good thing to have historical precedent, to have people understand that it's not just the Industrial Revolution that destroyed our soil. You know, civilization's ecosystem carrying capacity or human carrying capacity has been fluctuating depending on how much they desertified land for over 10,000 years, basically. Okay, so we're saying soil loss is not new. This isn't like blame it all on the Industrial Revolution. Great quote. Use it. It's highly used, so you won't be very original when you use it, but it's good. The Fertile Crescent used to be fertile. Did we use this last week? Great. So just look at this. When we just did this experiment, or when you're showing your class or whoever it is, it's really having people grasp, how is this system functioning? Right? Is this system functioning at its highest state ever? No. The answer is no. And what are these sheep doing? Overgrazing. Let's look at this grass here real quick. A cow uses its tongue to wrap it around the grass and pull it up. And so cows are often unable to fully overgraze. They'll kind of mow things down to a certain level. Sheep, on the other hand, and goats have teeth, and they can grab things right out and pull out all the little roots after they get short grass. So they can be even more degenerative. Even though they can handle themselves on harsh landscapes, they're degenerating the land still. A global epidemic. This is probably very bright online. It says, we have lost 1/3 of our farmable land in the past 40 years. This was on last week's as well, right? So it's okay to use slides twice if you want. But what we're really trying to hit home to people is we are desertifying the land extremely quickly. Where's my slide about, wait, that's weird. Oh, I was making a presentation for
Can I just ask a quick question about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
How do we define farmable land?
So in this definition, farmable land is not even including ranchable land or land that is in ranching currently or grazing currently. It's only land that is flat enough for cultivating crops. And that's what this statistic is from, let alone all the land that we've lost to degradation from overgrazing.
What do you define as flat enough? Because a lot of people still not flat land.
Mostly it has to do with land that is or has been in production. So most likely, if you have farmed it, it has been counted as farmable.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not like is it farmable only at this land. It's like, I believe it's mostly what people have farmed. So to really grasp this, I was making another presentation just for everyone's knowledge. You should probably write this one down in this slide. We're losing 30 million acres to degradation yearly. England is 32 million acres. So almost the size of England is being lost to land degradation every year. So that means we are trying to keep up with human population growth. We're degrading land faster than we are able to get new land, and we're destroying the new land faster than that.
So is that we globally or we in the US?
Globally. That's the global phenomenon. The global phenomenon is we're losing 30 million acres. And I'm sorry, I thought I put it on our presentation. I'll put it next week, but I'm making another thing for a group, another presentation. Go ahead.
So what do you define as loss entirely? Like the soil not bearing the capacity to support crop production whatsoever?
So most of it is people putting it out of production. So it's put out of production, meaning it's not, from what I understood, it's the UN statistics. They're talking about land that won't be coming back into production.
Okay.
So like not like, oh, we're letting it rest for this year, and next year it's being done. It's done skis.
And that's about 1 acre per second.
Wow. Ugh.
So you're talking about how soil loss and the degradation of fertility kind of goes over a very long time periods, and that's been since agriculture started essentially.
Mostly in brittle environments. Yeah.
Yeah. So is this saying that in 1980 we had this amount of farmland, over up until now, whatever that number was, a third of it is gone, or is it saying like a third of farmland has ever existed? We've lost a third of it in 40 years.
The land that so starting at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Starting 40 years ago.
We had
until
this much
now.
land,
Okay.
and now we've lost this much of it. Yeah.
And
Yes.
some of it, I
You
don't
can imagine
think
that
all
that
of
would
it.
make sense with the statistic that we're dealing with 30 million acres being put out of production every year.
Yeah, I'm interested in like the Industrial Revolution fits into this context though, and like the hyper-mechanization of farm work coupled with industrial synthetic additives.
I would
surely
just
would expedite the process.
100%.
Yeah.
So we're not trying to diminish that at all. All we're trying to do is relate that it has been happening.
Yeah.
And as people can imagine, tilling more and more as we saw the bigger machines from the other class of like, so it's just gotten worse. We're just losing more and more. Yeah, Don?
I was just going to say, and a lot of land is also lost to just building structure. So, you know, if you look at what happened in Fresno from 1980 to now, a lot of farmland has been turned into housing, subdivisions, etc.
Yes, totally true. And Don, I just want to, I'm not disagreeing at all, but when we're looking at the newly cultivated areas that are going out of production in 5 to 10 years, after they, you know, like in Argentina, for example, millions and millions and millions of acres going into production for soy, 5 years later, they're being discarded because they were basically tree canopy areas that can't withstand soy cultivation. So we're saying converting to regenerative agriculture can change that. That's the whole premise. So what we're going to do right now is go into, this is not necessarily for you to present out to the public. We're just going to go into dissecting what it really is. What does regenerative agriculture really mean? So that's where we're going right now. Okay, so this isn't necessarily presentation material. The little girl's saying, but how do we know if it's regenerative? So, which one of these is regenerative?
Not necessarily anyone.
Not necessarily anyone,
But could be.
but could be all of them. We have a very smart class. All right, done with lesson. So, when we're talking about organic, for example, organic's origin is regenerative. The whole premise of it was regenerative. If you look at the organic standards, there are requirements, I believe in section 2, that you are supposed to build soil or maintain your soil rates. The problem is, unfortunately, that there are lots of good guys in organic, but acre by acre, there are more bad players in organic right now, and most organic, unfortunately, is falling into the category of list of things you can't do, and people who are adopting it for major large-scale conventional agriculture are unfortunately still doing degenerative agriculture with a list of things they can't do added on. That's our point from Kiss the Ground. Some people would say no, organic is just good all across the board. Be like, well, acre by acre, we have more degenerative organic land than we have regenerative organic land, supposedly, from what we know. So when we're saying this, we love organic. We want people to go organic. It is essential to have this. And we all need to be cognizant of the reality of where organic is right now and how we can all help it and how we can talk about regenerative in association with it and prop up the good players in organic so that there's higher pressure on the other folks in organic to get their act together. Yeah?
Question. I think it was from the guy from, I guess the Gabe guy.
Gabe Brown?
Gabe Brown, I was reading in the book, and I think it was him talking about how at this point he has to spray periodically. That's the only way to get rid of the weeds because of the particular size of his farm. I've been sort of like struggling with that. Like,
Great question. So I know Gabe Brown personally. Right now he's off 100%. Back when we wrote the book, he was just diminishing. But that aside, why Gabe Brown doesn't say, I want to go 100% organic, is because in his operation, thinking holistically, for him to go out and spot spray something very quickly and effectively before it spreads meaning a plant that he doesn't want in his thing, like a thistle or whatever it might be, if he wants to go do that, he doesn't do, plain glyphosate stuff. He'll go out with a back, shoot like, oh, I don't want that thing, spot spray it. So when we look holistically, he wants that option for his property. He chooses not to get organically certified because of that. So even though he's one of the most acclaimed regenerative farmers, and right now he isn't anymore, he isn't using those, but he was in the past, and that was the reason, was basically like, I want to be able to have a really high performing farm, and I don't want any of my tools taken away. So there's people who argue on both sides of whether that's should be allowed or not, yet the results of Gabe Brown's farm being one of the most regenerative productive farms that we've seen, you kind of say like, well, this person is doing that, and that's their choice. Who's to say if it's bad, 100% or good?
Also, if that's the only way they could get started or stay viable for a few years with the intention of getting, I found myself wondering that, is that kind of how many people would have to start? Like instead of saying, you gotta do it, you gotta get it, to just say, you know what, this is real common for people to have to do this at the beginning, don't beat yourself up, don't give up on it. I was just trying to.
So the wean themselves off process for profit, for functionability, for nature's ability to do the regenerative thing, you have to get yourself off it. Otherwise it'll stop regenerating, right? But again, this analogy, so if we have a bad farm that isn't spraying anything, and we have all this runoff, and there's leachate and all of these things going into the water system, even though they're not glyphosate per se, they're all these other things, you can be doing significant damage to the ecosystem while doing the right thing, versus saying Gabe Brown is bad because has used glyphosate. So again, when we look holistically, it's harder because you can't just say black and white, bad, good. You can't just say organic 100% of the time is the best thing ever, because time and time again, you have this farmer over here who's doing spot glyphosate, and then you have a farm over here who's doing full tillage organic. Who's regenerating the land faster? Who's doing a better ecosystem service? That's where we get into it.
Farmers to prop up and buy their stuff. I know in that one video you guys did at the end of it, there was pictures of Campo, which was awesome, but is there like a list?
That they're more on regenerative. They do organic too, but we were just talking to Organic Valley. I mean, there's a bunch of great brands that are doing great organic and have.
Is there like an actual compiled list of people to support?
Sounds like a project.
All right.
I don't know. Probably there is. So looking at these other ones, so we have conventional, we have grass-fed, we have the regenerative organic certification. This is obviously our highest followable new certification that is regenerative organic certification. So that's our closest. And still, the question is it regenerative, right? That still has to be a question there. No matter how amazing that standard is did it regenerate? Did it actually help? Did the farmer actually regenerate at the end of the day, right? And that's where biodynamic is obviously a champion of regenerative as well. So anyway, just wanted to give people a perspective on what we're saying is the agriculture causing regeneration? There are many different descriptions of regenerative, and you can read this and get into it, but we're basically summing it down to, is this system of farming making the ecosystem function better, making the water better, making more carbon in the soil every year, blah, 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 blah. There are metrics, and we can look at it. So ecosystem carrying capacity, this is that generalized version of it. Regenerative, it's going up over time in production. Degenerative, sustainability. Another, using this again as a reference. Our outcomes. Again, interrupt me at any time if you want to say what I hear you saying is, or you have a question, okay? Is it regenerating? Here are just some examples of what we're looking at. Increased soil organic matter, increasing water holding capacity, increasing nitrogen cycling potential, increasing infiltration rates. So sand is good at what? Infiltration. What's it not good at? Water holding capacity, right? So when we're talking about the increasing water holding capacity and increasing infiltration rates, both those things are a necessity, okay? Because if you have great water holding capacity tested, but your infiltration rates suck because of how you're doing your managing on the top. Increasing fungal to bacteria ratios. I'm going to add a video. Michelle, could someone remind me to add a really great video to next week about this? Increasing mycorrhizal fungi colonization. So remember we talked about economics last week? Or regeneration? Oh, the week before, pardon me. So week 2, we talked about regenerative economics, and I gave you that analogy. Maybe it's here. Oh, it's right here. Perfect. 1,500 acre farm is the average farm size in the United States. Okay? It takes about 15 tests at $50 a test to test this size acre farm. That's $750. Okay? What this test is showing is what is biologically available. Okay, so let's just, I feel like I saw someone yawning, so I always have to make sure people are not falling asleep. So when we say biologically available, what does that mean?
The plants can absorb it.
Plants can absorb it. Because of what?
Because it's, is it demineralized or mineralized, that thing where the enzymes break stuff down?
Because certain organisms make it available, right?
Because certain organisms
Right.
make it available.
The life, biologically available, so the life made it available for the plant. So when we're talking about functioning soil where air is infiltrating down with nitrogen, right, and we have nitrogen-fixing bacteria, as well as the legumes, which are basically bacteria inside of the nodules, right? Don can explain that a little better if I messed it up. But the point is that when you test for biologically available nitrogen, you're adding that to what you've calculated with your chemically available nitrogen. Now, 99% or more of testing is just testing chemically available nitrogen. Okay? So when you test biologically available, you're usually getting 40 to 50% more nitrogen availability. You getting what I'm saying here? So you test. You test.
Or you mean in the regenerative soils?
No, all soils. You test what's most soils. Yeah, it's gonna vary depending on how biologically active your soil is. But generally, you test your chemically available nitrogen, and you say, oh, you have this much available, and then you say, oh, we're gonna add how much biologically available is. That's a different number than saying this is how much we have. And most farmers are going out and buying, and they're recommended by the people selling them, this is how much nitrogen you need, because this is what we tested. So we're saying test what's biologically available, and with $750, you could save $22,000 or more on nitrogen costs. Does that make sense? Yes. When we're breaking it down like that, all of a sudden a farmer is able to reduce their nitrogen by 30% first year. That's going to have huge impacts on our environment. Yeah.
I think this is really important too, to make farmers the expert again. So often these big chemical companies become the experts in farming, and they tell you you need this much nitrogen. But giving farmers the ability to
play in this.
Yeah, to have a debate over realistically how much nitrogen they would need to theoretically add. But also this 1,500 acre average farm, that maybe if you're talking to a group of farmers, it may be a little misleading because there's so much production in farms that are so much larger.
They just
that
do the
there
math.
are very few that are actually 1,500. There's really small ones and massive ones, so this average number may not be the best if you're talking to farmers that are really familiar with farm size.
Perfect. And this is a note for, I think you were trying to make a note for everyone. Just do the math. If it's a 6,000 acre farm, just do the math. The Geico commercial might not fit perfectly because it's got 5s in it. I don't know if you noticed, but yes.
But the point is still there. So
That's what,
testing can really
What kind of test, what kind of biological test are you talking about? Is that the Haynes test or
Yeah,
something?
usually we say the Haney soil test, the PLFA microbial community, the 3 that are involved, Earth Fort Essential Biology Package, Earth Fort Advanced Biology Package. So those 3 that are included in this Haney soil test, we recommend those because farmers are seeing a huge saving, and they can confidently. The big problem is that they're up, and which one of you was just saying that? Yeah, the advantage, like, otherwise they're posed against someone who is an expert, and they're saying, that's how much I need to have. And they're over-applying their nitrogen because they don't actually need that much nitrogen. Yeah. So this is where farmers can save money, less nitrous oxide because, right, we can grow soil. I hope everyone's okay to spend 15 minutes extra tonight. So that's the point, is we can grow back soil, we can grow back its functioning. So I was going to add some more statistics on this, but I didn't get to it. Farmer Brown, this is Gabe Brown, 16 inches of rain in North Dakota on average. That's not very much rainfall. That's including snow melt. 2% to 7% soil organic matter. That means 1,000 more gallons of water held per acre. Held in the soil. soil available water. We all grasping this? So with just 16 inches of rainfall, so Gabe Brown, if you get emails from me, the bottom quote I have is, it's not about how much rain falls, it's how well your soil absorbs and retains that water. That's Gabe Brown saying, look, we have this all wrong. It's an infiltration problem. Okay, so principles first, practices second. Why would we say principles first, practices second?
You have to believe in something to apply it constantly.
Yes, and what do practices, why would practices be second?
Because if you don't understand the principle, then how can you practice it correctly?
Great. So what we're saying is context, right? Because you can have if you have the principles, you can be more flexible, right? With what practices make the most sense. If you just have practices, you're not as flexible. You're just like, I was told this is what I had to do. But you're not amorphous in this.
You almost don't have a vision as to what you're trying to, a goal accomplish, right? So it's kind of like you're practicing, but you don't really know what you're trying to hit or miss.
Yeah. Great. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and also you can like make spot decisions based on new situations that come up.
Exactly. So being flexible, that's why we're saying principles first, practices second. Because so many people are saying, are you doing this? Are you doing that? And it's so hard not to be like, oh, you just need a cover crop, you just need to do this, you just need to do that. Depending on the crop, depending on the year, depending on the environment, how brittle it is, depending on the average moisture throughout the year. There are so many variables that can shift your practices for how and when and what and why and where, right? Yeah?
Yes.
Does anyone want to try this? Anyone who's falling asleep want to try this one? Sorry. We have got guayaki. That should, oh, I'm sorry. Not allowed to swear. That stuff will help you out. Anybody want to try this one?
Yeah.
No?
I'll try it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So ideally what you want to convey to farmers, to community gardens, to anybody who wants to grow, to help this movement of how to build healthy soils would be to transmit the principles so that they understand the vision, the goal that we're trying to accomplish before they get into practicing it.
Because it allows them to be more flexible, right?
Because it allows them to be more flexible.
Right. If something comes up, depending on their scenario, certain practices may not apply.
And innovative.
And innovative, yeah.
And I think every scenario is different, right? So you will have to adjust your practices based on where you live, what happened to the soil prior to you arriving there, right? So
Yeah.
the history of the soil will tell you what needs to happen as well.
Great. So I really liked how she just took what I said and made it into her own words instead of saying what I just said. Did you guys see the difference of that? It came out of you totally your version, not just regurgitating what I said. I love that. Thank you. Okay, so here they are, the principles. And again, like these are just kind of made up, and they're a reason there's not so many of them. There probably could be a lot more, but this is just so that it's easier for the world to. Now these have been adopted all over the place. It's really exciting. Least disturbance. What do we see in this picture?
No till.
Tilling. What else?
Synthetic additives.
Synthetic additives. You can name a lot of things. Compaction with tractors. You could name it. You could go on and on. Least disturbance. Living roots. Why are living roots important?
Because the mother sends messages to the offsprings, and we need them to have that information.
That's one of them. Awesome. What else? What else is
Mycorrhizal fungi.
feeding mycorrhizal fungi, right? What else?
Erosion.
Reducing erosion. What else?
Holding carbon.
Holding carbon.
Giving glucose to the microorganisms.
Putting the carbon in, right? Making glomalin. So this is fun. When you're with your audience, I encourage you to do this. Let's have someone else come up and just run us through this with a smile on their face. Who wants to do it? You can start from where I left off. You can go to soil armor. Yeah, go ahead.
So with soil armor, how can these ways affect us to have better soil?
Why would we want soil armor?
Cover crops?
Does it help keep the soil moist? Does it
Yeah.
help-
Let's have them answer.
Helps it keeps it cool.
Yeah.
suppresses weeds.
Yeah.
It absorbs the sunlight's energy.
Retains water.
Retains water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nutrition.
Keeps the soils protected.
Yeah.
Reduces oxidation.
Who said that?
Nancy.
Nancy, can you extrapolate on there? What is it protecting? Try to think about what happens when we protect the soil. Why is that important? From what? It stops evaporation, but let's think of like
You want to be protected. You want covering over the soil so it's not exposed and it's protected from the elements and.
So what did we just see here? It rained, right? And we got more compaction. Right. What happened if we just had this flower and we had a big fan right here?
Erosion.
It'd blow away.
Wind erosion, right? Dust bowl situations? Cool. So protecting it from the elements. I just wanted to keep going there. Great job. And anything else on soil armor? Sorry.
Reduces oxidation, so CO2 production.
I have a quick question. So the soil armor, the thing that confused me was when the rain was infiltrating so well in our experiment.
Yeah.
How come the soil armor isn't an impediment to that?
Because this is not some like solid surface, like say concrete. There is all these like tiny little tiny holes that are like made through various processes which can allow water to seep into it.
Okay.
So, and then one more, that was perfect. And one more thing is they're just slowing down the rain. Just we didn't talk about it, Dan. Don, I forgot. I don't know how I just called you Dan, but that's weird. We didn't talk about this. So sorry to interrupt. When we have aggregated soil exposed, what's interesting is all these little aggregates are amazingly created. So when it rains, huge raindrops are coming and exploding these structures and smashing them. And when they smash them, it disperses them. So when we talk about rain hitting the ground, when you're saying, wait, wouldn't that make it so there's less absorption if the leaves are protecting it? No, the leaves need to slow it down. Otherwise, we will get compaction very quickly. We will break apart all those aggregates. They will turn into sand silt. The clay will go to the top and we'll have compaction and a layered zone and it'll erode faster. Yeah. Keep going. Animal integration. Go.
So, what are some of the benefits of having various types of creatures on the land besides humans?
Increases water infiltration.
Tiny puddles in their hooves.
Yeah.
Their manure is great nitrogen, nutrition, overall nutrients. They provide nutrients.
It really helps for our lives.
Yes.
So the grazing on the land actually tills in the dead
Biomass.
the dead plant life that has to be tilled into the soil.
Because you need to have the plant mass converted into something because it can't just grow and then die, because then that leads to desertification with that mass converting into something else.
Over rest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
And if you rotate the animals, then they graze evenly across and not just continue to deplete one area.
And as they graze, as they eat the green grass, they whatever the process is, it actually aerates the soil a little bit.
Does anyone want to go with disease? What are they doing to stop disease?
They're eating.
So
worm larvae.
Right. So which ones would be doing that?
The cows.
Probably not the cows.
Oh, no, the chickens. The
Chickens,
chickens
right.
bringing the larvae.
Great.
But the cows are also because they're wrapping their tongues on the I think that was in grass. Yeah, on the grass, and then they're tugging on it, which makes the plants activate.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you don't do that, there's not something to tug on it, then it just dies away.
And their saliva, all their saliva helps.
Breaks it down, right?
It just brings different life and all the life biology.
And also, with that dung, that can attract other smaller forms of insect life that will then break down harmful parasites and so there's more so for me it's more of so it's not just livestock integration, it's like having this larger biodiverse, which is the next point effectively.
Good job.
All right, let's go to biodiversity. We can just wrap this one up real quick. Let's get one answer from this.
It's good to have biodiversity because
It stops disease propagation for one, within animals and plants.
They become stronger, the plants become stronger.
Different plants add different nutrients to the soil.
yeah.
Right. Above and below.
Yes, and they have different size roots.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Size does matter in this case.
Yeah.
So it makes the whole system stronger by having this diverse profile with various types and sizes of
Right.
roots and microbes and creatures and such.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. So, yeah.
Can I add something? It's a random tip that may or may not be helpful for people.
Go ahead.
So when I was trying to memorize these principles, I would forget. On
Nancy, you're breaking up a little bit.
occasion,
Go ahead. One more time. Start.
what was what, and so I honed an acronym, LANDS. So L. Okay, go back. I would forget on occasion some of them. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
And so I honed a acronym, LANDS. So living root, armor on the soil, no-till, diversified crops, sometimes animals, if that's helpful for anyone to remember the principles.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So what we're going to be doing these following slides. Yeah.
How important is the integration of animals?
How
Can
important
you
do
regenerate
you
without
think? That's a great question. Can you be regenerative without animals?
No,
Why is the answer automatically no?
because they're part of a living cycle.
But let's just break it out. Like when we think of animals, this picture is animals, right? And those are some bigger animals. But they're animals everywhere.
Right.
And they're essential to making a system healthy and function. So microscopic, animals aren't microscopic necessarily, insects are, and other organisms are. But when we're looking at life, I would always look at when we're saying, are animals necessary? No, but yes, because every time we're talking about where are you getting your amendments to balance your system. So Ryland, who's the owner of Cafe Gratitude and the other founder of Kiss the Ground, vegan restaurant owner, his parents started a farm and tried to have a vegan farm. What did they need? They needed fish emulsion, they needed manure. Where was the manure coming from? Bat guano. The point was that they were not able to have a farm function and produce without animals. So then they said, wait a minute, why are we shut? We don't know where this manure is coming from. It could be from CAFO farms. That's terrible. We don't want to support that. So they ended up integrating animals on their land, and all of a sudden they got lambasted by vegans because they were trying to make a farm that was the most regenerative and biodynamic as possible, yet they were otherwise just denying where their fertility was coming from.
So was vermiculture part of it? Would that, like those worms, would that be considered an animal?
I mean, it's vermicompost. I mean, debatable what you want to call as animals, but the point is, on a large scale, to be regenerative, animals are needed. That's why they're in the principles. Yeah. So that's the short of that. Okay. Go ahead.
What about like market gardeners who, they're just growing vegetables, and really it's not part of their scheme of things to keep cows or
Chickens.
anything else like that.
They don't need to, but Elliot, let's just be real. If they're utilizing things from animals, animals are necessary. We don't have artificial things aside from fake fertilizers to do this otherwise. So animals are necessary, And integration of animal on your property just makes it that much easier because it's not having to be shipped.
There are some farms that I have worked with that do have fully vegan practices, and I would say are the most regenerative that I've seen by using leaf litter compost and the way that they manage by managing their grass systems through wood mulching to replicate cow poop. They have been vegan in farming for 35 years. Will Bonzal, he has a book that's in several libraries that I've seen. He's also part of Scatterseed. He's a big seed saver. There are exceptions to the rule for being small farmers. For being a large scale farm, I think it does stand. It benefits to have livestock, but for small market farming, I don't think you need to have animals.
You don't need to have animals. Great.
But he's also regionally adapted to where he is, so it's different everywhere.
I think it's totally debatable. I'm going off of what I know, but I'd love to be shown where it's not necessary, and I think it should be available for everyone. Can you post that stuff on Teachable for sure? We now have to cram through a lot of stuff, but these slides are super helpful for, again, we talk about generalizations a lot because that is part of helping, in my opinion, helping people get contexts and get ideas. So the following slides are showing two major phenomenons, carbon dioxide and water vapor, or water itself, and the directions that they're going, okay? So when we're comparing bare soil and cover crops, for example, we can use the series of slides here that are going to compare two things. And just to get a little thing, you could share this with your audience. So we're going to be looking at these comparative slides. These are generalizations, you're going to tell your audience. Okay, so there are exceptions to every rule. But generally, bare soil is the generative, meaning, in our case, we're looking at CO2. More CO2 is going up than going in, and more water is leaving than going in or being held, right? It says, in general, this practice leads to degeneration of soil health, as opposed to cover crops, in combination with other regenerative practices, can build soil health. Carbon dioxide more is going in, and somehow we lost our water vapor thing. Oh, there it is. Our H2O, more water is being held and absorbed. So, is everyone okay to stay 15 minutes extra? Yeah? That's going to help. Everyone online okay with 15 minutes? If you have to leave, just watch it later. So, I'm going to go over some tips here of how to present this, some things that have worked. So when we're looking at bare soil, I encourage you to encourage others to remind them of how much bare soil they see. So how many people have been driving down the highway or flying in the plane and seen miles and miles of bare soil? Now, the next time your audience is flying or driving, they're going to look at bare soil differently. Case in point, yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Generally, I fly to San Jose a lot, but I always see a bunch of them, and they're different colors, but it looks like they're solid. Is that just because I'm high up and the dirt's different and you can't see it? Because it all looks different brown, but they're just different color browns. And I'm trying to.
That's a great question.
I'm trying to think of plants that are brown and I can't.
No,
they're
not
different. So is it just maybe different soil?
It could be wheat and rye. Oh yeah, it could be wheat and rye stuff. Yeah. That could be totally. And then you might see bare ground compared to that. I'm not sure, but just get on a smaller plane, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. It's definitely different texture. You could see it.
So
I just recently
you're
went on the
super
plane
high
and I
up.
was staring and I was like, wow, you can see the difference. It's very clear.
The point is, when you're looking, you see things differently, right? Yes. A case in point of this was I presented years ago when I first was just as far as you all are into this. I was presenting at Davis, and these professors who've been working in agriculture for 20 plus years, they emailed me the first time we were driving back to Davis from where this conference was. It's the first time we looked out the window and saw the bare soil and thought to ourselves, what the heck are we doing? So these are people who are soil scientists, getting a storytelling person as myself, sharing hey, this is a difference. But that's where the power of these tools can have. When you just remind someone, look, see bare soil, see it as something we need to denormalize, they will. They will see it differently. So when you're that invitation, it can change the trajectory of history for certain people and hopefully the world. So that's where when we're reminding people. So when we see bare soil, we're saying, what's happening on this soil? Our carbon here is oxidizing. We're having more carbon leave than carbon go in. So we're carbon output positive, right? What happens to the water here? Evaporation, right? When we have bare soil exposed, there's more evaporation. Yes. So as opposed to cover crops, what are cover crops doing? Intaking carbon dioxide. Where are they putting it? Into the soil, right? So we have a net positive going into the soil. Water. Who talked about what are they doing when water falls on this? What are the plants doing? Who said slowing it down? Did someone say that?
Yes.
Slowing it down. They're slowing it down, allowing it to hit the plant and drip in, slow it down. It hits a nice root zone and just gets another nice entryway. As opposed to over here, what happens when rain hits this? Well, what first happens?
Breaks it apart.
Breaks it apart, like the mini buildings exploding, makes it into smaller particles, and then we have compaction and runoff, right? This is allowing for slowdown and infiltration to happen. All right, so someone jump up here and do this slide for us. Who's up? Someone online, you can jump on too if you decide to do it.
Okay, just because I want to say something too.
Great.
Well, I was like, so with bare soil, leaving it with no cover crop or anything like that, it just leaves the land bare to have the sun beat down and like heat it up, which causes more water to be evaporated and then more organisms like to decompose, which releases more carbon dioxide. And to see the power of rain, you can watch like Planet Earth, like in the jungle scene when it's flying down and seeing all the insects and they're flying everywhere. It's really cool kind of to think about like that's the damage that it can do, and that's even like in the jungle. And so the cover crops really help to slow down the speed of rain. And then also once it like gets in there, it's allowed to actually infiltrate and to be absorbed into the dirt because there's more surface area, so like more air and pockets for it to get into, and then that causes more carbon dioxide. Like it causes the plants to be able to photosynthesize faster to take in more carbon dioxide, which overall just creates more regenerative fields.
What else is happening with the water? I didn't mention it, but what else are the plants doing to make it so that the water is staying there?
Absorbing it themselves, or
they're protecting it, right? They're making.
Oh yeah, they're stopping the heat from the evaporation.
They're shading the soil.
Shading the soil. What else are they doing? They're shading the soil, but they're also endothermic, which means they're making less heat, right? There's just
yeah,
less
so it's
heat.
cooling the earth by
Absorbing the sun energy and using it. Awesome. Great job.
They're also feeding the soil biology.
Feeding the soil biology. He mentioned that and making it so that there's higher photosynthetic capacity. So here is just, you can use the slides, bare. And here's another fun interactive thing. So Kevin, we might have you back up here to now use the principles of regenerative agriculture, right? So we're going to be able to follow the principles of regenerative agriculture. So Kevin, come on and give us this. Why now we're looking at the principles and how they compare.
So in comparison to the principles, living roots, obviously we can see there are no roots to be living. And in that sense, if there's no roots, there's no diversity. And this and then that just leads to the next one, of maximum disturbance, which leads to like no diversity, which has no roots. And this looks less like animal integration and more machine oriented, which just kind of removes us one step further, which leaves the soil completely bare with no armor.
Great.
And then it's the opposite. There's living roots everywhere, which causes more like aggregation in the soil. The more diversity of the plants like working together helps like putting in more nutrients and adding others, just with the variety of different crops. And as the more that you let grow is just minimally disturbing them as you let them grow.
So I have a question mark there because we don't know, even though it's great cover crops now, we don't know what's happening other times. So that's why there's a question mark there. It's looking good, but the question mark is there because we don't know 100% what happens the other times of the year for this farmland, right?
Right, okay, yes. And the same with animal integration, maybe just right now, they're not, but it could be at another time.
Really
but-
great way to make money is to graze cover crops. Sorry, I interrupted.
Having animals graze, not yourself. And then the armored soil is obviously covered, being protected with the soil by all the plants and diversity.
Awesome. Great. All right, so let's have someone online do tillage. Do you want to run through the whole thing with us on tillage? Someone online. Someone who hasn't talked yet. There's been kind of constant people who are always talking. Someone who hasn't done it yet. Take a stab at it.
Hey, I can go for it.
Go for it.
I can go for it. So you wanted to use the regenerative guidelines within these slides, correct?
Yeah, you're just basically comparing the two on both carbon dioxide, and then you're going to, after you're done with carbon dioxide and H2O, you're going to go to the principles.
Gotcha. So with tillage, you are releasing CO2, which is, degenerative and not holding into the soil. It is not increasing the, oh gosh, I need some help here.
So I'll do a couple, and then you'll just go after me because I didn't do this one first. So what did we talk about before? Where we break apart the soil, which exposes more of the carbon in the soil to oxygen, right? If I break this apart, there's going to be more exposure, which means we're going to have more oxidization, more carbon dioxide going up, right? And we're also
correct.
So tell us about what happens to mycorrhizal fungi when we till.
Those get, when you till, they get completely broken up and they dissipate and die off.
And then when they're dying off, they turn into?
Carbon dioxide, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now let's talk about water.
So water does not get withheld in the soil and evaporates quickly because there's no vegetation for it to get pulled down into. And with the erosion, increased erosion, depleted topsoil, and flooding. So.
Great. Now comparing the no-till plot.
So no-till, so living roots, everything is continually growing, continually covered the soil. It's protected from the sun, and it pulls down the carbon and it kind of contains it within the soil, so it's not being immediately put back into the atmosphere.
So what's happening? What's happening here? So we have this residue left. So what the organisms in a good situation, the organisms are able to start to eat this, right? And if they're decomposing it, some of it's going to turn into carbon dioxide, but some of that's still going to be food for your living organisms. So you're going to keep the life alive, right? Even though you're eating the carbon, you're having more life stay alive because you have something to feed it, right? And then immediately you're plugging in your actual living plants that are feeding them the sugars, right? So explain that to us real quick.
Well, when you have, the plant organisms kind of living within the soil, the mycorrhizae and all the biology in the soil, have to develop bonds within the soil to kind of pull nutrients from the deeper parts within the soil to kind of feed the new plants that are sprouting by using kind of the network supplied from the past crops that are kind of continuing this cycle of, becoming part of the soil and feeding into the new crop that's coming up.
Great. So what I heard you saying was that we have all of these roots in here too that aren't being tilled up and cleaned out. This whole thing, Don mentions this often when he's presenting this is our neat looking farm. How insane is it that we made this the cool, neat thing when we have no roots in here, when we have all these roots that are dying and they're pathways for the water, they're food for all of the organisms in the soil, and their systems are still intact. Even though they're dead, they're still helping the whole function of the soil. And if we plug in living roots on top of them, we get free compost and free decomposition and new sugars being pumped in. Great work. Thanks, bud.
Question.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I mean, I think the no-till
Is still using some type of tractor, because it seems also very, yeah, and almost like it seems like it's a large area, so I'm assuming that there's still some type of tractor and compaction happening, but the fact that they're at least incorporating like cover crop and not leaving any bare soils is
Great.
better than none.
So, great thing. And yes, they are using tractors, but compaction is much worse on bare ground. Why? Because nature is constantly, even our weeds, is constantly making air pockets and aggregation, which is fluffing up our soil again, right? So even though we're working against it when we're compacting with tractor, we're having much less of a, because it's like sponge, driving on a sponge that's going to help constantly feed itself to bring itself back into shape, versus driving on this and you're just compacting it, smushing it.
Just a question for a very small urban farmer, a person who's trying to grow food on their own property in LA.
Yeah.
So rather than doing the thing like, let's say you've grown stuff and your kale isn't producing anymore and neither is your something else, and instead of yanking it out, if you just chop it off at soil level and leave the roots in there, is that?
You will probably have new baby kale come up and it tastes great.
Oh,
Newly
okay.
rooted. And in some cases, it really depends on the time of year for me. My experience is I always do that, and lots of times I'll just get fresh little baby kale that tastes better anyway, but they're from the same root system. But yes, if you can, keep it in there.
I was just thinking of the benefits to the soil.
Structure, yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. It's great. Whenever you can leave roots in, but most of the time, if you don't eliminate roots, the plant will come back in most conditions. Chemicals. What is wrong with chemicals?
They make plants lazy.
They make plants lazy. Great point. So nitrogen makes plants lazy, right? Why does nitrogen make plants lazy?
They don't have to work.
They don't have to share, right? It's like a spoiled kid, yeah? Because they're not having to work with the symbiotic relationships that make them actually stronger. What else happens when we put nitrogen fertilizer, when we over nitrogen fertilizer? What's this? What's this stuff? What's this symbol? Nitrous oxide. Ding, ding, ding. So did you know that nitrous oxide is the biggest greenhouse gas from our agriculture right now?
Yes.
Whoever knew that, A pluses all around. Go
And they'll
ahead.
label it as like land management, so it's really hard to unpick like what exactly these emissions are from, but it's from nitrogen fertilizer.
It's
Read
a-
the fine print, it'll tell
It's
you.
a really important one for all of us to grasp when we're talking about the addiction that farmers are on for this right now and the potential we have to get them off of it. Some people are being like, gotta go 100% organic. But if only 1% of the, or 3% of the population goes organic of our farmers, we still have this major nitrous oxide issue. If over the next 5 years, we can get 50% of farmers to take out 75% of their nitrogen fertilizer, we've done an amazing impact. Are they fully regenerative based on how much GHG they're putting out? Maybe not. But the point is we could have a major reduction in one of these most potent, fast greenhouse gas that is accumulating right now if we reduced nitrogen fertilizer. Saves the farmers money. Everybody wins.
Are you saying nitrous oxide is bigger pollutant than methane from agriculture now?
Yes, from
I thought
agriculture.
I thought the methane produced from cows was the big one, but this is changing, I guess.
No. We can send you stuff to show you. Can you shoot me an email? If anyone needs to email me, Phineas@kisstheground.com.
Can we put that in Teachable, the links to that?
Yeah. I'll just probably add it to the slides too. So CO2, we have chemicals. Why are they producing CO2?
Little things are dying.
Certain things are dying. Fun fact, nitrogen, when you overapply nitrogen fertilizer, it increases bacterial ratios a lot. Bacteria have a really high nitrogen to carbon ratio, meaning if you add extra nitrogen, their population explodes because they have enough nitrogen. What do they also need? Carbon. If you're not feeding them enough carbon, what are they going to do? Eat the carbon in your soil. And that means they're decarbonizing your soil. okay? Chemicals are also depleting the organisms in the soil, like the mycorrhiza fungi, right, not needing to be used. So that means we're having less water holding capacity, et cetera, et cetera. The last thing here, we're talking about pesticides. Let's talk about pesticides. How many, Don, we got this wrong last class, and I had to tell people individually. It's 120 beneficial organisms. This is just the estimate based on what we know of biology. When we kill one pest, we're killing 120 beneficial organisms with one pass every time. So when we think about, oh, we have to target this one pest, what damage are we doing throughout? Okay? Obviously, no chemicals. We get this opposite effect going on. Any questions on this? Yeah.
I'll just add like the production cost of these synthetic additives. Nitrogen fertilizer takes a ton of energy to pull it out of the air and make it into a liquid form. And we typically do that with fossil fuels, so it's like another layer, and then transport it all over the globe.
Can you speak up a little bit? Sorry.
Yeah, nitrogen fertilizer takes a lot of energy, and we typically use fossil fuels to do that, to pull the nitrogen out of the air, liquefy it, and make it into this fertilizer, and then we also ship it all over the world. So just CO2 all along the production chain.
Right. Increasing the overall greenhouse gas of all of agriculture.
When you can get it for free on your land.
Right, here we have, look, living root, diversity, minimal disturbance, no, animal integration, we don't know, armored soil, looks like sort of living root, diversity, animal integration. Oh, we had animal integration, I should have checked that one. So you can just use those. This is, again, we have the glyphosate map. This is a good one to show people. 1992 to now, we've just gone bananas with our glyphosate, folks. And people are wondering why we're all so sick. Okay, overgrazing, overrest. Why is overrest here? Anyone want to give it a shot? We understand overgrazing, but what's wrong with overrest?
When you don't have plants be consumed by something, they will type convert to shrubbier, less digestible forms of life.
Right, so when there's not a animal feeding on them through this process that they were evolved with, they will oxidize at the bottom where they'll grow too tall, and they'll start to oxidize right by the top of the roots. And Roger Savory, who is Alan Savory's son, he talks about when we look at major damage of an ecosystem, overrest will kill all of the plants in a grass species, versus overgrazing is a slower death. But overrest can happen all at once. You lose a whole field. And then, as was just mentioned, you get a regime change. So you go over to brushes, things that can survive. All of a sudden your grasses are gone. Question or statement?
Don't some grasses require like animals eat them, digest them, and expel them to keep replanting themselves?
That's part of what the ruminant process of certain seeds do require. I'm not sure which grasses, but yeah, there are some species that require going through the ruminant to actually be viable for seeds.
Do you guys ever work with like transitioning to ruminants that are native to the North American continent?
Yeah, we have a lot of bison buddies. Overgrazing is pretty obvious. I mean, when we talk about carbon dioxide, now all of this carbon that's in the soil is exposed. CO2 going up, water, obviously, we get higher evaporation rates. Planned grazing, we've watched a lot of videos on planned grazing so far. We get this. This is such a telling photo. I mean, this is literally what the options of the future are. So again, I encourage people to use these type of images to say, like, this doesn't have to be our reality. Why do I know this? Because this is a real picture. This is not photoshopped. So when we grasp that this is just a management thing and it's an infiltration problem, things change. That means we can recover areas that have been extremely assumed to be dead and gone. South Africa, 8 inches of rainfall per year. 8 inches. That's such little rainfall, but look at how much biomass they have here compared to here. There's a bison for you. This is why we're mimicking this process. The reason why we can't right now, I'm not going to say can't, why it doesn't make tons of sense to use bison. Let's try to think of some reasons. Why, if we went instead of all cattle to regenerate our land in the Midwest and the whole U.S., If we use bison instead, what could be some issues with that? Just throw them. They're not
I think
domesticated.
they're more subject. I think they're more subject to a certain kind of bovine brucellosis or something compared with.
How high can bison jump?
6 feet.
Oh.
6 feet.
And they're huge.
And they're freaking huge. So just the fencing alone. How many people watched The Regenerative Secret, the video? Did you see how fast they make a paddock? In 15 minutes they make a paddock because cows aren't going to go through a single wire that's electric right now. Bison don't give about it. So when we talk about managing land effectively with the human constraints we have right now in the roads and everything, we do want bison to come back where and how they're applicable, especially in areas with Native American populations who deserve and should be working with bison. But again, thinking practically and how fast we need to regenerate the land, fencing wise, to make this work, that's a ton of timber and blah, 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 blah. We have this already. CAFOs, planned grazing. We get this, right? Annuals versus perennials. Why are annuals more carbon dioxide going up?
Year or less.
What happens when you plant them more often?
You disturb the soil. You're abstracting more.
Yeah, more soil disturbance. So when we're looking at this system, there are heavily disturbed perennial systems. I implore you to Google almond orchards and then don't look at the first picture. Scroll down Google a little ways and start to see the real deal of what almond orchards look like in our state. It's horrific. So perennials aren't necessarily good, but if you have a perennial system where they're working together, you can have a highly functioning system. Compost, organics and landfill, methane gas. How many people are composting here? If you're not composting by the end of class, I will throw the shame card at you really hard. It's serious. You need to shame your friends too, because some people don't do it with just praise.
Vermicomposting is a great option for people that live in small spaces.
Yes.
Because you don't need the big pile, you don't need as much heat, the worms do all the work for you, you don't have to turn anything.
And then you
My
can give
favorite
that
method,
to everybody
just
else.
throw it out there.
Windbreaks. This is something that was introduced for the Dust Bowl era. Unfortunately, we have lost so many windbreaks. And why are windbreaks important?
They're managing the soil, they're managing the land.
There's so many reasons, but wind picks up speed. Okay, so when you have a windbreak, let's just say here is our windbreak. This is not the best one. But if you don't have a windbreak, the wind picks up speed like water picks up speed, and it's going and it's becoming more intense. If you have a windbreak, the wind goes like this, and it has to come back down, and then it starts to pick up speed. If you have another windbreak, you're constantly breaking up the wind's speed and capacity to disperse all your soil. So, yeah.
I mean, in California driving, I never see anything like that, and I just was in France for a really long time. And I never knew why they had all the fields that I saw always had all these trees around it that looked like this, and I always just thought, why are they having them there? And then seeing this, I'm like, oh, that totally makes sense.
But do you see how they have them separated? There's actually a mathematical reason why they have them separated. I know the math somewhere in my head, but there's actually a mathematical how far you need your windbreaks to have the optimal windbreak. The other thing, what are each of these things doing? There's a name for these things that are occurring in between our probably monocropped areas. What did Don say earlier that the zone between this area and this area, it's called riparian zone. It's extremely biodiverse. Riparian zone is extremely biodiverse. So when you have these things here, this is where you can have super high biodiversity, which is going to keep your system healthy, where all these birds and things are able to live, right?
That's actually by water, then, the riverways. Sorry.
Those are hedgerows.
Oh, so what are they called? They're not called riparian? I totally thank you for the correction.
Riparian would be along the edge of a water system.
Okay, so what are these called?
Hedgerow.
But there's a name
hedgerows.
there's a name that has to do with the biodiversity of it. I'm forgetting right now.
Just edges of ecosystems.
It's an ecosystem edge, however you want to call it. There's one.
It's an edge.
It's an edge. Great.
In
Love it.
permaculture, that would be considered an edge.
Great, it's an edge. So it's a highly biodiverse section. Silvopasture, This is an extremely high carbon sequestration potential, at least what the scientists have told us, having trees where animals are grazing. Huh?
Sorry, it's an ecotone. That's your edge system where you
Thank
get
you.
maximum biodiversity.
Okay, I take it back, not a riparian zone, ecotone.
But a
Okay?
riparian zone could be a great ecotone.
You're right. I
Definitely.
love how foolish I feel when I mess up. Great, so that's good. Any questions?
You're doing great.
Any questions about this?
No, can you talk more about our final presentation and what we should be doing to prepare?
Great, we're going to talk about final presentations. If you have to leave, please, by all means. Final presentations, the reminder is this is not a TED Talk. We implore you to not do a whole talk, because fitting a whole talk into 10 minutes, especially when you actually are talking it out, is extremely difficult. So the ask is do a section of your talk. It can be the introduction section, it can be part of the introduction, it can be the middle section, it can be this section. Being like you, and what you do is you come on stage right here and you say, or online when you send it in to us, or do it before class, you say, here's where I am in my talk. I've talked about this and I've talked about that, and now I'm going to start. And then you're in your zone, okay? So if you're saying, I'm just starting with my introduction and then I'm going into part of my talk, that's it. You just introduce yourself and get ready for it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Next week, 1 to 2 minutes, you're coming up here and doing slides. Explaining a slide or two.
Does it matter which one?
Any one that we've gone over. Thanks, everybody. Great class. Thanks for staying late.